Well, hello there, and welcome to Wathan Creations. Today we're making the formidable Nosk, a horrible little beastie from the game Hollow Knight. If you haven't seen it before, just imagine a giant infected spider skeleton that wears your face. At the core of Nosk is a bulbous belly, glowing orange with radiant infection. I started off planning to just sculpt the emaciated ball out of clay, but then I decided to really enhance the glowing infection effect that I could make the abdomen out of glow-in-the-dark resin instead. To pull this off, I first whipped up some 2-part silicone, then submerged the clay to make my mold, vacuuming out the bubbles to get a nice smooth cast. However, I forgot that aluminum foil and clay float in silicone. After some mild panic, I constructed a very professional rig to hold the clay ball down while the silicone cures. Then after 24 hours, I'll easily extract the mold from the pot and slice out the belly. To make the glowing epoxy resin, I'll use some orange glow-in-the-dark alcohol inks and pigment powders. Once that's all mixed up and vacuumed, I'll pour it into the mold. And, well, my first cast ended up getting a little bit frothy, which made the belly into a toxic orange creamsicle. Not to be dissuaded, I made a second resin belly, being extra careful to have absolutely zero foam. However, this time my shoddy silicone mold dented and deformed the cast, and it was also at this point that I realized that the glow-in-the-dark inks and powders I used didn't actually glow in the dark. Which, I mean, that's the whole point. But then, I spotted some translucent clay, and I had an idea. Using my original clay belly as a template, I made a spine for my monster out of some wire and clay, using cosclay separator to make sure that nothing stuck together. Clay separator is a water-based liquid that keeps layers of foam from sticking together, allowing pieces to be pulled apart after baking. The crux of my plan is to have a creepy, hollow, translucent clay stomach held in place by a removable rib cage. The inside space is just big enough to hold some LED fairy lights, so that I don't have to mess around with soldering or wiring. Once it's baked, I'll slice it in half, split it from the original discarded belly, and then test out the lights. Not gonna lie, this made all of the previous failed attempts completely worth it. I mean, look at that. With that finished, we're on to making the spine. Nosk is a skeletal beast, and I wanted to lean into that simplistic design by making it look as if its body was made out of bared bone and sinew, predominantly textured with a variety of ball styluses. I didn't add too much detail to the bones, instead opting for more of the simplistic, cartoonish look of the original artwork. To make the ribcage removable, I used heavy doses of clay separator so that I could sculpt each rib to conform directly onto the belly. I wanted to be able to remove and replace the stomach at will, so having the ribs removable is key to the sculpture's design. Once the ribs are baked, we'll start working through the tail, leg sockets, and neck, moving through each vertebra one by one until our predator's spine is looking mighty dangerous. The clay I was using for this project was a little bit brittle and kept cracking throughout this stage, which I repaired with some hasty binds of liquid clay and superglue. Then for one of Nosk's key features, we'll add the spines to the top of its back, sharp and deadly. I really like the shapes of these. They're almost regal, like the tops of a crown. Next, we'll add the 4 back legs, using double-wound armature wire to support the entire weight of the sculpture. Unfortunately, I didn't reinforce the leg sockets, leaving them weak and prone to bursting. The front 2 arms are simple danger daggers, modeled like a praying mantis. Each leg gets covered in a layer of thin clay, textured with some ball stylus rolling to make them look extra bony. Then I can bulk out the knee joints with a couple caterpillars of clay, blended to give the impression of separate bones connected by tendons. Then, disaster. The entire skeleton burst and collapsed in the oven. However, one thing I've learned from other sculptors on YouTube is that there are few mistakes that can't be fixed with some 5-minute epoxy and green stuff. To hold the joints together and make the sculpture sturdy once again, I'll bind the limbs to the shattered socket holes with a combo of the two, which fortunately held it all together even stronger than before. Then it's a simple task to cover up the rough spots with some additional clay, and blend it in like nothing ever happened. And we're finally onto the head, which is the iconic Hollow Knight mask, twisted upside down. Nosk reads into the minds of its prey, wearing faces stolen from their memories to convince them to follow into the deadly trap of its lair. I experimented with a bit of shoddy claymation on my Patreon this week to try and show the process of the little knight following Nosk into its trap. Claymation is definitely something that I'll be experimenting with a bit on my Patreon. Let me know if you'd be interested in seeing something like that eventually on this channel. To make the mask's cape, I'll drape some aluminum foil over the neck bones, then add strips of cosclay, like twisty scraps of fabric. In retrospect, I wish I'd spent just a little bit more time making this look a bit more interesting, since this sculpture doesn't have a whole lot of detail to catch the eye, but hey, it does the job. We'll take the sculpture apart and start in on the painting. The hollow monster's belly gets painted with some heavy orange washes to tint it the appropriate color, dabbing away some excess to add mottled nuance to enhance the glow. Then Nosk's skeletal frame gets painted in pitch black. This was part of the fun with sculpting in white clay, getting to see it slowly disappear into the shadows. The monster's inky coloration probably helps it camouflage in the dark caverns where it hides. It's all a bit too one-tone though, so to bring home some life and texture back into the sculpture, I'll dry brush the whole thing with some dark gray to highlight the edges. Then as a final touch, I'll break out the airbrush and add a soft blue glow to the tops of the bones. Onto the mask, I'll touch up the cape with some dark gray, then add some faint blue tone highlighting to fit thematically within the realm of Deepnest, where the monster's lair lies hidden. And here's some riveting content, painting a white mask an even whiter white. The whole mask gets covered using an oil-based ceramic paint, which will add a nice shell-like sheen to the surface. Then I'll fill in the eye sockets with an inky, soulless void. I forgot that oil-based paints don't exactly love acrylics, so when I tried to add some black wash weathering to the helmet, it didn't really work out. However, when I started dabbing it away, there was just enough left to add a little bit of nuanced grime to the mask. But with that, we're all finished, so we can put the insect's body back together, piece by piece, and let the monster go hunting. And that's it! I hope you enjoyed the sculpture, and if you want to see any more Hollow Knight creations in the future, let me know down in the comments. Big thank you as always to my patrons on Patreon who help keep this channel chugging. If you like this video, consider subscribing for more spooky creations coming soon. I'll see you next time.